All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ronnie Lau, and I'm a manager in NEA's Government Relations Department. I'm so happy that y'all could join us tonight to talk about what's next for student debt. Obviously, there have been a number of changes and a lot of things that have been happening in the news from the Supreme Court decision and what's next going on this subject. And so this was a great opportunity for us to talk to our members and our educators out there and talk about what we can do to help you guys out and navigate this space, and how to digest all the information that happened from the last couple of weeks. So just a couple of housekeeping items. If you do have any questions during the time of this webinar, please make sure to use the Q&A function at the bottom of Zoom and not use the chat. It's the easiest way for us to log all the questions. We're going to do the best that we can to answer all the questions that we receive, either through live live audience, or also at the same time through the Q&A function and text. If we don't get to all your questions by the end of the webinar, we'll be sure to follow up. Our team will look at the questions and send a follow-up email afterwards to all the registrants. We'll also say that when we're not speaking, folks on our team here will be addressing those questions in the Q&A box also as well. And we'll start off with a couple round of introductions. I'll pass it over to Sophia to start.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Sophia Midas. I'm a fellow in the NEA's Office of General Counsel. I'm delighted to be joined here with my colleague, Jeff Burrett.
Thanks, Sophia. Yes, I'm Jeff. I am staff counsel in NEA's Office of General Counsel. And take it away, Sam.
Thank you so much, Jeff. My name is Sam Jonietz. I'm a senior policy analyst within NEA's Department Education Policy and Practice, focusing on higher education and workforce. And like my colleagues, happy to be here. Scott.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Kish. I'm with NEA Member Benefits, and I'm happy to work with the NEA on launching and developing our Student Debt Navigator, which you'll be hearing more about shortly from the last person that we're going to be introducing, Lindsay Clark.
Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Clark. I'm the Chief Borrower Advocate here at Savvy. And like Scott said, excited to talk to you later on in the presentation about our Student Debt Navigator to help you navigate through all these challenging decisions and times.
Wonderful. Thanks, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. So before we get going, one thing that we want to encourage all folks here to do, especially all of our NEA members out there, so to get the latest news, different webinar invites, or different resources that the National Education Association provides around student debt in higher education, you can text the word student debt in one word to 48744, and that will allow you to access all of our resources at that link, nea.org/student debt support. That will lead you to a short survey to literally just to type in to see if you qualify for different loan forgiveness programs. 90% of the time it will say that you do, because a lot of the changes that we were able to advocate for really reaches a broad audience of our educators out there. And of course, if you're not a member of our union, we highly consider you to join us today. You can go to nea.org/join to learn more. The power that we as a union and all of our advocates out there from our union members, all of that is because of you guys, and we're not able to do such a fantastic job at making these critical changes that support our educators out there and our students without our union members. So thank you. And then another really quick housekeeping item is your federal student aid dashboard, or your FSA ID. You can go to studentaid.gov and create an FSA ID if you haven't already. This is something that is separate from what you normally use with your student loan servicer. This will allow you to access many different things, information, historical documentation of all of your federal student loans and different forgiveness opportunities. So if you already have an FSA ID, just make sure you update your contact information. That'll make sure the Department of Education and its servicers have the most up-to-date ways of getting in touch with you, especially about different changes and loan forgiveness opportunities. And as a reminder, again, this is not the same as your login with your federal student loan servicer, which you normally use to make your student loan payments. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff to talk about the Supreme Court decision.
Thanks, Ronnie. I wish I had better news to share on this front, but it's not all as bleak as it may initially seem. In June, the Supreme Court reminded us in a number of cases, including the student debt case, why elections matter. You know, a few years ago, we were just tantalizingly close to flipping the Supreme Court and locking in a majority for a generation of or more who we had hoped would act to protect educators, students, people of color, women, workers, and consumers. But we know that didn't come to pass. And we are seeing the fallout of that every year, most notably in June, as the Supreme Court continues to tear down and deny rights to millions of Americans, including in the student debt context. So taking a step back, as you can see here, and as many of you know, in August, the Biden administration announced really just a once in a generation or more debt relief plan. No administration has acted anywhere near as far as the Biden administration has on a number of topics, including making good on a campaign promise to cancel some amount of federal student debt. So in August, the Biden administration, working with the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, a friend of NEA's, issued or announced a plan to cancel $10,000 of debt for individuals earning less than $125,000 a year, with an additional $10,000 of cancellation for those who were able to finance their education in part using Pell Grants. This would have affected tens of millions, in excess of 40 million borrowers nationwide. It was incredibly popular, and it was going to be a very simple plan to carry out. Within a matter of weeks, more than 26 million borrowers applied, and the department was processing applications so quickly that in just a few weeks they had approved more than 16 million borrowers for debt cancellation, until a number of right-wing organizations, having filed lawsuits challenging the plan, succeeded in convincing a court to temporarily halt the plan while it was being reviewed in the courts. The case quickly made its way to the Supreme Court. NEA proudly filed an amicus brief. We spent a great deal of time, and many of us did, including Sophia and myself, drafting an amicus brief, joining with many other allies who filed their own amicus briefs to convince the court why this was a perfectly lawful plan, why the court should allow it to go ahead. And we noted that the court continues to put its own institutional credibility on the line by engaging in this partisan politics of putting its finger on the scale of political issues that here was clearly within the authority of the Biden administration, Secretary of Education, to carry out. Next slide. I'm sorry to say that, as many of you know, the court ignored our concerns and rejected our arguments. So on the last day of the term, on June 30th, the court struck down the debt relief plan. I won't go into chapter and verse about the decision, but I'll say that Chief Justice Roberts, writing for the 6 conservative members of the court, held that the Secretary of Education lacks authority to cancel student debt, as he was attempting to do through the debt relief plan. The Secretary sought to cancel student debt under the HEROES Act of 2003, which gives the Secretary broad authority to waive or modify provisions pertaining to federal financial aid in times of national emergency. We were in a time of national emergency. People were impacted by this. We all lived under emergency orders because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the Department of Education engaged. This did take a while for the administration to carry out, because the Department of Education carried out or engaged in very careful study of what it would mean to come out of the payment pause, and concluded that many borrowers would fall into default and delinquency at a much greater rate than they would have absent the pandemic. This is exactly what Congress intended. And yet the court said, essentially, we don't buy it. We don't buy that Congress intended for this to be the case, despite the fact that for 2 decades now, Congress has had language on the books clearly giving the Secretary very, very broad authority to take this type of action. So it continued a trend, a longstanding, more broad concerning trend of stepping on the executive branch and ignoring fundamental separation of powers principles in order to advance a political agenda. In dissent, Justice Kagan, writing for the 3 liberal justices on the court, wrote a scathing opinion, batting down all of the various arguments that the majority put forth. But of course, while a dissenting opinion can be satisfying and important for the record, at the end of the day, it doesn't. We are still left with the majority decision to strike down the cancellation plan. So for now, the debt cancellation plan that we've all heard about for the last 11 months or so is dead on arrival. And this is where I get to the good news, because there still is some good news, and that is that the fight is far from over. NEA has never stopped and wavered from fighting for affordable and accessible college. In a number of programs, as Ronnie and others will talk about in a few minutes, the Biden administration has already taken steps on the, incredibly quickly after the court issued its decision to explain a path forward, and there is a path forward. And we continue to work with a host of allies to make sure that we, carry out the goal of affordable and accessible education for all. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ronnie to talk a little more about some of these exciting steps that are coming up.
Thank you, Jeff. So as Jeff alluded to, the president and this administration and also the NEA is not willing to give up on this, right? The Supreme Court decision was a minor setback, and there's a plan in place for them to keep moving forward to looking at a different program or different method to succeed with the proposal of the cancellation program, and a number of different ways where our educators can get debt forgiveness. And if anything, a better program that will allow you to get more debt forgiveness than what the cancellation program intends to do. So as I mentioned, there's a couple of different ways about what they're doing to proceed in this Plan B process. The first is that they're going to try to execute the cancellation program that was struck down by the court through a different matter of authority. They're looking at a different portion of statute in the law through the Higher Education Act, or HEA to be short. And so with that said, going through that process, they have to go through negotiated rulemaking, which is an arduous process, unfortunately, but a process that they'll get outside opinion from public organizations, advocates, borrowers, other interest groups, et cetera. And so a rulemaking committee is being formed at this point. They're going to have a public hearing in the coming weeks, actually on the 20th, coming up soon. So very quickly, they're going to start hearing opinions from outside organizations on this, starting the 18th. And interest groups. There's also an open comment period right now that folks are able to contact the administration and Department of Education to talk about their thoughts about this cancellation program. And so, as I mentioned, NEA is going to be fully engaged into this process, and we're going to make sure that every single student and family will be able to get the debt relief that they deserve. And as I mentioned, as continuing rulemaking will proceed, we'll update our members as developments continue. Next slide. But I think the more paramount program that we would love to talk about with y'all tonight is Public Service Loan Forgiveness, or PSLF. Some folks on this call may have heard of this program previously and probably had a negative connotation to what this program led to. And that's because, unfortunately, until 2021, this program had denied over 90% of applicants. This program was established back in 2007. It was a bipartisan program passed under the last couple of years of the Bush administration, and a lot of the implementation went into the Obama administration. And the promise of Public Service Loan Forgiveness, or PSLF, was simple. You just had to work in full-time for public service for at least 10 years, and that will be through a public service employer, which includes all public school districts, including public and nonprofit higher education institutions. And what's important here is that your job title doesn't matter. Teachers, professors, adjunct professors, ESPs, SIS, you're all eligible. It's about who you work for, not about what you do. And then you have to also make 120 on-time monthly student loan payments during those 10 years. So 12 months of payments in the year times 10, 120 payments. And also those months right now from the payment pause in the last 3.5 years also count towards Public Service Loan Forgiveness. By fulfilling both of those criteria, you would get full forgiveness on your federal student loans. But as I mentioned, up until very, very recently, a lot of folks have been denied to this program. But this union and this administration has done some tremendous things to help get loan forgiveness for a lot of our educators. So we had the PSLF limited waiver that ended last October. That was the first phase of some of the things that they were doing in the Biden administration to get folks with debt forgiveness. Now we also have another thing called the account adjustment, which we'll get into in a little bit, which applies to all different types of borrowers using an IDR plan between now and 2024. There's also improved regulations from regulatory policy that the Department of Education has recently implemented from July. And then, of course, there's a better income-driven repayment plan coming this summer as payments set to resume. And throughout this webinar, we'll touch on each of these topics. But just to talk about Public Service Loan Forgiveness specifically and what this Biden administration has done, the amount of debt forgiveness that was forgiven through the limited waiver, which the numbers are continuing to ramp up as we see, because they're not done processing these applications. There's still hundreds of thousands of folks that got before that October deadline, and they're getting more debt forgiveness as they continue to process them. But $42 billion was forgiven to educators and other public service workers who apply for public service loan forgiveness during the limited waiver period. And 1 million of those folks are estimated to receive either forgiveness or get closer towards that 120 payment mark because of the limited waiver. Again, there's a lot of course correction that need to be done because so many folks were getting rejected and denied from different loopholes and other issues that they had to face with PSLF. So it did a ton of credit to provide retroactive credit to making progress towards public service loan forgiveness. And then an estimation of, as of May, 1,500,000 borrowers have received loan forgiveness from the limited waiver so far. And again, that number is going to keep going up. And again, the National Education Association, our members here, we sent 170,000 messages to the Department of Education demanding for change to this type of relief. And then just to compare it to prior to those numbers, prior to 2021, only 16,000 of total borrowers received forgiveness prior to the limited waiver. So we have multiplied that number to multiple hundreds of thousands at this point, which is really amazing. And we have great opportunities here to tell you how you can continue to access this benefit for public service loan forgiveness, despite all the things that are happening around broad student debt cancellation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sam.
Thank you, Ronnie. So if you didn't apply during the limited waiver, don't worry, because there is another option, as Ronnie alluded to. The Biden administration does want you to get close to those 120 payments, and so they have announced a one-time account adjustment that will include prior months that might have not been counted, including such things like late and partial payments, payments that were made under any repayment plan, whether that was Parent Plus, if you have Parent Plus, Fell loans, Perkins loans before you consolidated them, or months that you were in extended forbearance. All of that time will be credited under this one-time account adjustment. Now, if you are a federal direct loan holder, you don't have to do anything. That will automatically happen in 2024. At that point, you'll have all of those additional months credited. Now, if you have a Fell, a Perkins, or a Parent Plus loan, you will need to consolidate those in order to get credit under the one-time account adjustment. Now, the department did extend that time that you have to be able to consolidate your loans. So in order to be eligible, you do need to consolidate them prior to the end of this year. And we do urge you to do that as quickly as possible. Once you do so, your account might show up at 0, but don't worry, because we've already been instructed by the administration that this might happen, but it will only be temporary. Because after the adjustment takes place, your payment count will not only return to what it was, but will increase because it will have the adjustment included. So in addition to the one-time account adjustment, the Biden administration announced permanent changes to the PSLF program, and they took effect just about 2 weeks ago on July 1st. Now, these include allowing borrowers to obtain other credit for some late, partial, and lump sum payments if they certify qualifying employment. It would also award credit for months that you may have spent in deferment or forbearance. If you had consolidated your direct loans, you will not lose that payment progress. There are other some opportunities to request reconsideration for forgiveness. And finally, if you are a contingent or adjunct faculty member, it streamlined the calculation for what is better seen as a full course load by creating a credit hour multiplier. So all of these things are designed to increase your total credit for the PSLF program. Now, in addition to PSLF, there's earlier in this video, there was talk of a new IDR plan. Now, the NEA did submit comments earlier this year for proposed regulations, and on the same day that the Supreme Court announced their decision, and the Biden administration produced their Plan B. They also unveiled the final rule for what they are now calling the SAVE Plan. Now, the SAVE Plan is a new repay plan, and it basically is just a new IDR program that makes it cheaper, that you are paying less per month and for a shorter time, will save many borrowers thousands of dollars over the course of their loan. Now, the biggest change as part of this, which will go into effect later this summer, will be unpaid interest, I should say interest that is accrued in addition to whatever your monthly payment will be, would just be waived for the month. So no longer would you have a principal loan balance that would grow in size. That amount would be waived. It will also lower the loan payment by almost half for undergraduate loan payments. Monthly payments will be based on a lower percentage of income, and the amount of protected discretionary income will be increased. Now, borrowers owing $12,000 or less will be eligible for forgiveness in half of the time as the current plans. And finally, borrowers in deferment can make those catch-up payments later to stay on track for PSLF. Now, some of these will go into effect later this summer, the unpaid interest and the amount of income protected. The rest of this plan will go into effect later next year, and we'll have details for you when that happens as well. Now, unfortunately for this new SAVE plan, it is not available for Parent Plus borrowers. That is something we raised as a concern, but unfortunately the department did not include that. And I'm gonna hand the back over to Ronnie.
Nope, it's
Oh,
me.
sorry, Sophia.
But that's okay. Hello, everybody. So I think we've all been on the edge of our seats preparing for payments to come back. The Biden administration announced this summer that payments are going to start in October. So that's going to mean a few things. First, the first thing you're going to see is the interest is going to start accruing on your account. That's the easiest thing for them to do. Their systems are pretty complex, they're overloaded. So the first thing they're going to do is start racking up that interest. And sometime in October, you will get your first notice to make a payment. And in order to get that all going smoothly, we've got a few steps. First, identify your servicer. This could have changed over the course of the pandemic because servicers have changed. That's happened to me a few times already. Or if you have applied for PSLF, you've been transferred over to MOHELA. Sometimes that's been pretty slow. So we've got some borrowers who are kind of in limbo, but make sure you know who your servicer is. Create your account with your servicer. You'll probably have a letter or an email from them detailing that process. And make sure your contact information is up to date with that servicer and with the Department of Education. So if you go into your studentaid.gov account, you can make sure your contact information is there, and then go onto your servicer account, make sure it's all there. Most importantly, for all of our borrowers who are recently getting into repayment or some who have not been on that IDR plan before, you must enroll in an income-driven repayment plan. These are the only plans under which you can make qualifying payments for PSLF. So if you want to eventually get PSLF, you have to be making your new payments under an income-driven repayment plan. And you apply for those on the studentaid.gov website. The navigator that we'll talk about later also is a great tool to help you figure out which one is the best and how to apply for it. And finally, with your servicer, you can enroll in auto pay. So you don't have to worry about getting the notices and making your payments on time. Just have it all set up for you. So we're trying to get everybody automated, everybody set. You still have a few months, few weeks, but it's better to take care of this early because their processes are pretty slow. And a major thing for some of our borrowers who are in default is to get out of default. Once payments restarts, you can start making payments that will get you closer to PSLF. Because if you're in default, you technically cannot make any progress towards PSLF and you can't receive PSLF. So to get back on track, the Biden administration is offering a new program called Fresh Start. And it's different from getting out of default, the different mechanisms that they had in the past. This is essentially wiping your slate clean. You're going to get out of wage garnishment, any other involuntary collections that you get, like taking away your tax credits. they're going to remove that defaulted loan from your credit record. And already they just announced this today. They've seen people's credit records jump 50 points just from getting rid of that defaulted loan. That's a huge difference. That's going to make a difference for car payments, for mortgages. It's also, once you do Fresh Start, you can apply for an income-driven repayment plan and reduce your monthly payment. Your monthly payment under those plans will be less than your garnishment, no matter what plan you choose, just because of the numbers, the way that they set it up. And finally, you're going to get your loans back in repayment, which means a few things. One, PSLF. Two, you can also qualify for loans again. So if you want to take out graduate loans or take out Parent Plus loans for your children, then you'll be able to do that. So the application process, it's all over. You can do online, by phone, or by mail. And once we send out these slides next week with all of our answers, you'll be able to access this link, and this information is also on our website. Finally, just to reiterate, we want everybody to have a smooth return to monthly payments. And to do that, you need to be making your first monthly payment and keep on track. Every payment you make will bring you closer to PSLF, and now they'll count even if they're late, even if they're a month late, 2 months late, 2 months late, because these new regulations that Sam was just talking about, one of the great benefits is that PSLF payments no longer have to be exactly on time, but you still need to make the payments. Now, if you miss a payment or you can't make a payment, that won't be a problem in terms of default. The Department of Education has promised that for the next year, any missed payments will not result in default, or they will not be reported to credit reporting agencies. So the Biden administration is going to protect your loans from default, protect your credit score, but we also want to make sure that everybody's making payments that they can make and making that progress towards PSLF. And we just had a lot of information coming at you pretty rapidly. So we're going to kind of pull it back and do some frequently asked questions. I've already seen a few of these come up in the chat. So I'm going to have Sam, Ronnie, and Jeff answer these while I'm sure Scott is still typing away in the background answering questions. So our first one is going to go to Ronnie. Yeah. How does the Supreme Court's decision impact PSLF and the student loan payment pause?
Wonderful question. So to put it simply, it does not impact either of those things. So the Supreme Court's decision from June 30th that Jeff talked about earlier doesn't impact any of the president's actions on public service loan forgiveness or the long COVID long payment pause. So again, more specifically, this means that if you have gotten forgiveness through PSLF under the limited waiver or the account adjustments, your loans are going to stay forgiven. The Supreme Court cases only looked at that specific program for up to $20,000 in cancellation. And then borrowers who also benefited from the payment pause, you haven't been making many payments for the last 3 or so plus years, you don't owe any retroactive payments for the months that you benefited from the payment pause. We've had a lot of questions around that because there have been a couple of cases and litigation around folks challenging the payment pause, and none of that was reviewed by the Supreme Court. Again, the only thing that was reviewed by the Supreme Court was the president's cancellation program for up to $20,000.
Thank you, Ronnie. Our next question will be for Jeff. If I have private loans or refinance my loans, am I eligible for forgiveness?
Sorry, I was joining Scott and trying to bang out some answers to your questions. If you have private loans or refinanced your loans, and by refinance, we're not talking consolidation, but refinancing them with a private company, then unfortunately, no, you would not qualify. And this is a position that many people have found themselves in, having possibly succumbed to pressure from private companies or otherwise finding reasons in the past to refinance. Oftentimes they find themselves in this position, and I'm sorry to say that there's really that can't be undone, and so you're left with those private loans. And I'm just being straight with you. I wish we had a better answer for you, but it does disqualify you from the PSLF program.
Yep, so this also serves as a time to warn everybody that if you're going to consolidate your loans, you only go in through the studentaid.gov website. Make sure you are on the Department of Education system, because there are a lot of private banks and lenders that will kind of present their system as consolidation, but really it's a refinancing it into a private loan, and then you won't be eligible anymore. So that's something to watch out for. Our next question is for Sam, who's been dutifully waiting. Should I apply for PSLF even if I haven't yet made 120 payments?
Great question. And the answer is yes, it's that. Now, in order to do so, you'll need to submit, you'll need to go to all of your qualifying employers and submit an application for each of them, going back at least 10 years. Now, you can submit at least one application that will save you time and effort in the future. We do recommend that you submit one annually. Now, there are a few ways in order to do this. The first one is to use the PSLF help tool, which we have the address there. Or if you're an NEA member, you can use the NEA's Student Debt Navigator, which I know some of my colleagues will be speaking about in a bit. Now, in order to submit that application, if you use the Navigator, your form will automatically be sent to MOHELA. That is the easiest way to do it. Savvy takes care of that, and you just have to get the form and they will handle the rest. Now, recently, the department made it a little easier to submit some of your employer certifications. Previously, it required it to be like an ink paper submission. They have made that much easier by making it an electronic option as well. So if you use a digital employer signature on the PSLF help tool, the form will automatically be submitted to MOHELA. But they still do accept the ink employee signatures in hard copy form. So if you already have MOHELA, you can just upload a copy of it. If MOHELA is not your servicer, you must mail or fax it to MOHELA according to specific directions. And the Department of Education recommends certified mail just to make sure that it gets to the right place.
Thank you, Sam. All right, our next question, I'm going to toss it to Ronnie. It is, do years of public service have to be consecutive to count for PSLF?
Short answer is no. As long as you work full-time for a public service employer for a total of 120 months while making payments for those 120 months, you're eligible for PSLF. So that means if you go into education, leave the profession, and come back, you can couple those years together to hit the 120 and 10 years of service to get PSLF. We also know oftentimes that some folks go back to education to go get a post-bac degree or get a doctoral degree and then go back into their public service job. So that way you can couple it. So you can take breaks, but as long as you can couple all those years of service together and make payments while you're working in those years of service, then you can qualify for PSLF.
Yep, thank you. Okay, this is an important one, and I've seen a few questions come up in the chat about repayment plans as well. So how do I know I'm on the right repayment plan for the account adjustment and PSLF? I'm going to give this to Sam since you were talking about the repayment plans earlier.
Yeah, sure. So all existing IDR plans are eligible for PSLF. So those include repay, the pay as you earn, the income-based repayment, the income contingent repayment, and also the new SAVE plan, which if you are on repay right now, you will just be moved over to that new plan. Now, with income contingent repayments, if you have a Parent Plus loan, that is the only one that you are eligible for, unfortunately. But yes, all existing IDR plans are eligible for PSLF.
It's great. And back to my reminders about getting ready for repayment. If you're already enrolled, you might have to recertify, so you should double check that. And to apply or to switch, you can use studentaid.gov. All right, here's another very popular one. I'm going to have Jeff answer this. He's prepared. Do Parent Plus loans qualify for PSLF?
Yeah, this is the Parent Plus loans are so tricky and have been really quite a headache for all of us trying to advise folks, and most certainly for the folks who have Parent Plus loans and have helped finance their children's education. The good news right now is that the answer is yes, that they do qualify. There are many limitations, but right now, because of the actions that the administration is taking, you can get them to qualify. If you are the parent, and all of this is about the parent, right? The parent is the borrower, so the parent has to qualify for PSLF based on their own employment and then payments made. What you have to do is you have to consolidate the loan to qualify. Ordinarily, when you do so, that resets that payment clock. So even if you've been making payments for years, once you consolidate, you start over. But for right now, That's not the case. This is one of the many big benefits that the administration has pushed for a difficult type of loan here, but a very common loan, of course. So consolidate the loan. You can find great information about this on FSA's website. I know it's very stressful to consolidate and to go through this process, but they make it quite simple. You go through on the FSA's website, as Sophia had mentioned, and you can consolidate them, but you have to act this year in order to gain credit for prior payments. Now, if you are the borrower, you're the parent, you have your own direct loans from your own education, as many people find themselves in this kind of generational issue of having your own debt and then debt for your children that you're carrying for Parent Plus loans. In that situation, you consolidate those loans. You will receive credit for the prior payments. But again, we can't implore you enough. You have to act now. This can be a stressful thing, but please take advantage of this huge benefit and act before the end of the year to make sure you get full credit for all prior payments.
That was great. Thank you. And another point to make, I saw a question by Angela about this, is that unfortunately, if you are on ICR and those are higher payments, and you like to find lower payments, part of that process will be consolidating so that you have a regular federal direct loan that can qualify for all the other ones. Okay, this question is for Sam. As an adjunct or contingent faculty member, I do not teach at my institution full-time. How does PSLF apply to me? And I did full-time in quotes, as we'll all realize that full-time is a confusing standard. Sam?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophia. So as was mentioned earlier, under the new PSLF regulations as of July 1st, for the purposes of the PSLF eligibility, it's now calculated by multiplying credit hour by 3.35. Now, the intent of this was to more align what is considered a full workload with the realities of, what is considered, a full-time employment in a outside of academia. And so the department did create this multiplier to better align what a full-time working course load would be. Now, even if it doesn't really matter in terms of number of employers, it does just need that total employment time to qualify. So for instance, if you're now teaching 9 credit hours per semester, that would be enough for an adjunct or contingent faculty member to meet the full-time requirement for PSLF eligibility.
Is great, thank you. Okay, and that is our last frequently asked question. So I'm going to introduce Lindsay from Savvy to talk about our NEA Student Debt Navigator that is offered by NEA MB.
Great, thanks, Sophia. And it's great to be with you all this evening or this afternoon, wherever you're joining from. Again, my name is Lindsay Clark, and I'm excited to talk to you about the NEA Student Debt Navigator that we power here at Savvy and sponsored by NEA Member Benefits. So if we can go on to the next slide, just to give you a bit of background about who we are here at Savvy. And this is the QR code that you can scan to gain access to the NEA Student Debt Navigator to get started. But on this next slide, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about who we are here at Savvy. So if we can go to the next one. Great, thank you. So Savvy is a social impact technology startup based in Washington, D.C. We were founded by student loan policy experts and advocates who had been fighting on behalf of the borrower for almost a decade. And in 2017, this was the first year that borrowers could start applying for public service loan forgiveness. The overwhelming majority were denied, and our founders saw this and decided to do something about it. So they built Savvy as a technology platform and a service to help borrowers like you and like myself not only better understand our student loan debt, but navigate successfully from start to finish around some of these really complicated and complex programs like public service loan forgiveness. But along the way, we try to make the experience of being a borrower better. And we do that by trying to reduce your monthly payments as much as possible and find you as much savings as possible. We're a registered public benefit corporation, which means it exists in our mission and charter to serve the public benefit. And that's exactly why we do things like this here tonight with the NEA team, as well as a host of other educational workshops and webinars because we firmly believe that when borrowers are better educated and more informed about their debt, they are more empowered as consumers. So what exactly does that mean? On this next slide, sort of talk about what it is that Savvy does. We basically are going to ask you a few simple questions, and through that, we are trying to simplify and digitize your eligibility and application process for these federal repayment and forgiveness programs. So really trying to make everything a lot easier. And this includes sort of end-to-end enrollment, tracking, and monitoring to make sure that you actually cross the finish line around forgiveness. I'm sure many of you who might have had experience with these programs know that it's really hard to reach that finish line. Many borrowers will get rejected and end up giving up. And so our goal is to make sure that you actually do end up crossing it. We also provide access to one-on-one support with student loan experts. I can say as a borrower myself, how hard it is to get accurate and trustworthy information, and how you just want to be able to talk to someone about your student loan situation. And that's exactly what we provide. So on average, Savvy users are able to reduce their monthly payment by about $150 a month by enrolling into income-driven repayment plans, and receive on average about $20,000 in forgiveness. And so far, we've helped our users find over $1 billion in projected forgiveness to date. So I really want to show you how to get started with this. It's pretty simple. Again, you can scan that QR code or go to neamb.com/student debt. And we'll pop that in the chat if we're able to as well. You can log into your NEA member benefits account. And from there, you will be able to access the Savvy tool and resources. So on this next page, it'll show you basically the first two starting questions. And it's pretty simple. We're going to ask you what your expected income for this year is and what your federal monthly student loan payment was. And most of us have had our payments on pause, so it's okay if you're putting what your payment was before the payment pause began. And from there, we're going to be able to sort of take you into our tool. So on this next slide, you'll see we're going to ask you just some basic questions around your family size, your tax filing information. On this next slide, we're going to ask you some questions about your income. So if we can go to the next one. Thank you. Yep. Just because, again, these income-driven repayment programs rely on that income information. And then on this next slide, we're going to ask about your employment. And this is really important for helping determine your eligibility around public service loan forgiveness, as well as teacher loan forgiveness. So we have a database within the tool that has all of the public service loan forgiveness and teacher loan forgiveness eligible employers out there. So if you start typing in your employer name, it should pop up from a drop-down menu. You'll be able to select it. And then we're going to ask you some further clarifying questions. I encourage you to add not only your current employer, but any previous employers you might have had. Because again, these programs are retroactive. So we're able to, based on the employers that you enter into the tool, more accurately tell you exactly what you're going to be eligible for. And then on this next slide, the last step of the process is syncing your loans. So we provide a loan sync technology through Plaid. If you have a Venmo account or a lot of other financial technology apps, you've used Plaid before. What it allows you to do is select your servicer. So let's say Navient in this case, enter in your Navient username and password credentials, and it's going to sync over a read-only snapshot of that data. So just things like your loan balance, your interest rate, your loan type. All of those are important for us to determine what you're going to be eligible for. Once you've done that, on this next slide, you'll reach the final step here, which we call our plan results page. So we can go to the next one. Awesome. And this is where you're going to see exactly what you're eligible for, what that new monthly payment could look like on an income-driven repayment plan, and specifically which one, what that total payment over time would be. So how much you'd pay in totality over those years, how long exactly, I mean, down to the year and the month until you'd be eligible for forgiveness, and how much in forgiveness you'd be eligible to receive. You can expand below for more details. It'll show you exactly what's involved with the programs. We really want to present you with all the information, but show you exactly what those options would look like. And then from that point, we take it a step further. So we not only say, okay, here are your best options, but we basically then take on all of the administrative burden for you with all of the applications from income-driven repayment to public service loan forgiveness. And this is provided through our essential plan, which thanks to NEA member benefits, is at no cost for all NEA members. So through that essential plan, I'm sorry, Sophia. You can leave it on this one. Basically, here's sort of a snapshot of what that experience looks like. With the click of a button, you can basically start your employment certification forms for as many employers as you need to, and we will pre-fill and digitize them and then send them to your employers for you. So we handle and manage that entire process on our end. And then once they get signed off, we'll actually submit them to MOHELA on your behalf. And then once they're submitted, we will then monitor those applications with you to ensure they reach that desired outcome. We've heard so many members talk about the issues that they've had with MOHELA, the long wait times for review, the wrongfully rejected applications. And so what we do here is really account for that and show you exactly what to expect. If it's taking longer than it should, we're able to flag that and help you follow up with your servicer. So again, you really feel like you have an advocate in your corner that's going to make sure that you reach that finish line. And then on this last one here, again, when you log into your Savvy account, you're able to see all of this and monitor it through your dashboard, sort of like mission control for everything that you're going to be doing with your applications and Savvy. And then going forward, again, you can select your Savvy plan right from that dashboard as well. And that plan includes access to those essential services, which are our premium services, access to one-on-one support, application enrollment and monitoring. All of that is provided to NEA members at no cost. So you can select your plan there. And then last but not least, our customer support. So again, I mentioned how important it is for borrowers. I can speak as a borrower myself to be able to access trusted guidance around their student loan debt. So we provide a variety of different options for borrowers to do that. You can consult our help center, very interactive content with guides on all of the programs that the NEA team has talked about here tonight. You can contact our support through an in-app message. So you can send us a message right through your Savvy account, or you can give us a call on the telephone number that I will show on our screen right after this. So what's next? Again, you can scan that QR code or go to neamb.com/student debt to get your account started. Make sure you are enrolling in Savvy's essential plan so that you can take advantage of all of the benefits that I talked about, that one-on-one support, the application, enrollment, monitoring, et cetera. And then you're going to want to make sure that before payments resume, you're completing your income-driven repayment application and or any other public service loan forgiveness applications that you'll want to submit. And for assistance, you can always call our telephone number at 833-382-3175. All right, I will turn it back over to the NEA team.
Yep, thank you. So we've got some audience questions that we were hoping to get through left over from the Q&A, and something we just want to generally address is questions from our aspiring educators and our new educators. Ronnie, do you have some questions from them in mind, or do you want to just kind of generally address their situation?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sophia. So I've noticed a lot in the chat about newer educators or those who are still in college right now and what they should be doing to get PSLF, or they may have been rejected previously when they first applied for PSLF coming out of school. So as we mentioned earlier, you need to accumulate 120 qualifying payments, monthly payments for PSLF while working 10 years at a public service employer. So if you're applying for PSLF early on right out of school, you're going to get rejected naturally because of that, because you have not met those requirements. But that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong because you're still making steps towards accruing towards that process. So for all of our newer educators or aspiring ed members who are looking to get access to PSLF, the first major thing that when payments resume out of this is that you have to enroll in an income-driven repayment plan. By enrolling in an income-driven repayment plan, especially the SAVE plan that's about to come out, that will make sure that you're making monthly payments that are the lowest possible, and they will accumulate towards the 120 towards your public service loan forgiveness credit. And then in addition to that, as we mentioned, it's probably best that you recertify and apply for public service loan forgiveness after every single year of your employment, just so you don't have to go back and look at multiple years and recertify multiple years at the same time. We found that when we do that kind of process, folks come about with errors, or Mohila or other folks and other services don't pull the correct information, and then just becomes a fiasco, unfortunately. So applying every single year allows you to get the most accurate payment count of where you're at. And then of course, make sure that you don't have to go back to those previous years and recertify those previous years of employment, so that at 10 years exactly, you'll receive your student loan forgiveness through PSLF.
It's great. Thank you so much, Ronnie. I have a question from Charlotte Covington, and this is about Savvy. She asked, if I've already started the application and have my employer certifications, can I still use Savvy? Lindsay, do you have anything to answer that?
Yeah, absolutely you can. We can help you from there and going forward. So I would encourage you to create your account, and we can basically track your progress from this point going forward, and make sure that you're getting all the credits that you deserve from Mohila.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we also had a question on that. Michelle asked, I've already submitted and gotten approved on my employer applications for PSLF, but I need some help with tracking the number of months that I've counted. Can Savvy do this as well?
Yes, that's exactly what we're here to do. So yeah, please create your account, reach out to us, and we're here to help, because I know you're not alone. Many borrowers and members have had those issues. I would say that's probably one of the most typical issues we see with public service loan forgiveness. So we want to make sure every month that you have eligible to you is counted, and you get as much progress as you deserve.
Great, thank you. We've got a lot of questions about Parent Plus loans. One from Angela asks, why are Parent Plus loans only allowed to use ICR? It is a huge difference between the amount of protected income that you have under all the other plans and ICR plans. And question is there a legal reason? Yes, that's just how they design the program. Parent Plus loans are generally disfavored in the program. They've got the worst terms and the worst repayment methods, which is why it's really important to take advantage of the opportunity to consolidate without any penalties right now. And what I mean by without any penalties means that if you have some payments in the past that could count for PSLF right now, if you consolidate, they will. In the past, they would not have. And in the future, we can't guarantee that they will. So our general advice for all of our Parent Plus borrowers is to consolidate and get ready for the account adjustment and take advantage of all of that. Does anybody else have anything to add on Parent Plus? Anything on the questions we've seen throughout the night?
Yeah, just on, did want to add about ICR. So yes, unfortunately, you have a Parent Plus loan. ICR is the only plan that you are able to use. This was a contentious issue around when SAVE was being discussed, but unfortunately the department did not go with allowing Parent Plus to be eligible for that.
Thank you. We have a question about consolidating graduate and undergraduate loans. This is from Sarah asking, should I consolidate those two? Anybody have an answer loaded?
I'm happy to jump in. I mean, it does depend on your specific situation. That's why we always advise you to go through the process, to talk to Savvy and any other benefits that you're eligible for. But in general, if you do have both of those, the new SAVE plan will likely have the most favorable terms. The changes that were made affect both undergraduate and graduate loans. If you are under that plan, but undergraduate loan length, as well as the amount that you're paying, will generally be lower. And similar for the graduate loans, the amount that you would be paying as a percentage of your income likely would be lower as well. Now, as I said, if you are under the repay plan already, you will automatically be moved over to that new plan. Otherwise, if you have any of those other loan type, you are able to go over to SAVE, except if you're on the Parent Plus loan.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Emily Rumble, who is currently a public school teacher and is also pursuing her graduate degree, which is incredible. We wish you all the best with that. You would like to know, if paying out of pocket for your degree, can you also pause your student loan payments until you get your new degree? There are options for in-school deferment that you can explore, and I think the best option would be to contact Savvy, set up your account, and see what they can recommend. Right, Lindsay?
Yeah, and I was just going to point out, though, for in-school deferment, that's one of the statuses where you are not able to accumulate qualifying credits towards public service loan forgiveness while you're in that status. So let's say, you did go, you're going back to grad school and you went into in-school deferment and you were still working, that period of time in which you're still working would not qualify towards PSLF. So in some cases, it's not the best to go onto that in-school deferment and figure out how we can, get your payment as low as possible so that you can still continue to accumulate credits. And that's obviously the conversation that we can have with you here at Savvy, just to make sure you're sort of maximizing that period of time.
That's great. Thank you for explaining that part of Savvy. I don't think a lot of people think about Savvy on the in-between part. We always focus on the PSLF, but you'll have a lot of tools that can help everybody. Let me see. Got a question from Wendy Young, also a graduate student. Wendy has worked over 26 years in public education and will soon graduate with a doctorate. Can I qualify my current loans with PSLF? So can I apply my 26 years of experience to my current loans to get PSLF, or will I have to work another 10 years? It's a puzzling one. Thoughts, anybody?
Well, I was just going to say, PSLF goes back to 2007, right? So if you, and it also is going to depend on when you took those loans out. So, if you took those loans out prior to 2007, and you've been working obviously over 20 some years, right? Basically the period from 2007 to present day is sort of the eligible time frame. And based on a lot of the expansion with public service loan forgiveness, there's a good chance that you could, whether you were making payments or not, get credit for a lot of that period of time. So I would say we'd want to look at your case, but I don't think necessarily you'd have to work another 10 years. I bet that, from that period, you've got eligible payments and might even nearly be close to the 120. So we'd love to talk to you at Savvy because it sounds like you could be very close, but I wouldn't say that it sounds like you'd need to restart, those 10 years.
Great, thank you. I see everybody else is busy typing answers to a lot of our questions. We only have a few left over. So I think it might be a good time for us to wrap up, unless there are some questions that we've answered in the chat that we would like to just kind of put out there broadly so everybody listening can get that information as well. Okay.
I think the one message is that, I know this is complicated, but this does work. And I think we just want to sort of put that point across. It does take some effort. We can't help you when, we recently met members that have received tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars of forgiveness by working the system and earning the qualifying for the forgiveness that they've earned. So we are continually working to try to help improve the tools, improve the programs. But please don't give up. It is definitely worth the time and effort for you to go through to sort of earn this. You've earned it, and we're going to try to do everything we can to help you sort of qualify. So I just wanted to pass that note along.
And just adding on to Scott, I know this has been said multiple times in this session, but this really is an important time if you have not consolidated, because the clock is ticking, and that period that you can take advantage of these very favorable terms will be closing at the end of the year. So if you haven't, you may lose out on that opportunity. And so we just encourage you to go through that process of consolidating, because it can save you a significant amount.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everybody. And I'll also say, please share this information with your fellow educators who are also have student debt, your fellow union members. All of you guys can benefit out of this stuff and benefit from our resources. So just a couple of reminding things. The webinar is being recorded so that once the webinar concludes, in a couple of days, we will send a link around for the recording of the webinar so you can backtrack and see anything that you may have missed during this time. We'll also send a PDF of all the slides that we went through today. And then lastly, any questions that we weren't able to get to live or answer through the Q&A box, we'll be sure to provide those answers to the questions through email afterwards. And all those answers will be sent out to all registrants of the webinar, because we know that many of you guys may have similar questions and may want to see those answers, or maybe there might be even questions that you didn't think about that you might want to get addressed and that you can see down the road. So thanks so much again for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure to talk to you all this evening, and please stay in touch. And otherwise, thanks so much for everything that you guys do as our educators in our nation. We are here to support you guys. And thanks again. Take care.